So what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Today we're here with Dr. Aruna Khilanani. I had first seen her when, these news stories about her went viral, when she was really giving white supremacists that work and telling them about themselves. And I say, well, who is this lady? And so I immediately said, Kellen, we got to get her on the show. So she's here today. So thank you, Dr. Khilanani, for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So, to hear the psychology of white supremacy broken down in that manner to the point that the white supremacists are crying so many tears, even on the right wing, they was crying tears all day long. And I love it. I love it, love it, love it. Let's tell people just a little bit, how did you get into psychology before we get into that?
Yeah. I'd always had an interest in it, but my background is more English, music, the arts, and sort of telling of stories. So I majored in English with, a focus on sort of Shakespeare, but I didn't kind of feel like it was enough there. Something was sort of missing. And then I ended up doing a master's at the University of Chicago, and the focus was sort of critical race theory and post-colonial studies. And I felt like it gave me sort of like that psychological piece that we were missing. Like, why aren't we telling these stories? This is more stuff that I can actually relate to. And then after that, I, went through medical school, I went through residency, I did all this training, and it seemed that almost like the higher and higher level of training that I did, and I've done tons of training, the more and more racist it got. And I couldn't exactly understand what was going on with that. And I noticed at a really young age that the way that white people interacted with me was very different. Like, there was a lot of attack, there was a lot of sugarcoating, there was a lot of saccharine, but not owning it. And it was really troubling. And it was sort of also kind of formulaic. So I think I kind of got into trying to understand that, and also trying to understand my own thoughts and reactions in relationship to that. So I think that's also what drove me into studying stuff around the unconscious and things around race.
Oh, now see, Dr. Khilanani, you just said a bad word to the white supremacists. You said critical race theory, and they're gonna say, you see, look what happens when you get taught critical race theory.
But I was feeling those things way before I started. Critical race theory just kind of gives you a framework for something that people are already thinking and feeling. And I think I wanted a step more because I wanted to actually have language and put what I was feeling into words, because I actually feel like the entire field of psychiatry and all of psychoanalysis is incredibly supremacist because they don't really have a sense of their blind spots. So I kind of began training and noticed that everyone was thinking the same. And the second that you would express something different, they do what white people do, which is correct your perceptions. Well, that's not really happening.
Okay. So the question I have is, what was that defining moment for you when you realized that, wait a minute, I mean, I'm literally dealing with white supremacy? Because usually always a defining moment. I've had mine, but what is yours? What happened? Is it an event? Is it just from realization with time? What was it?
I think I already knew that it was there. I think the aha moment for me is, what's going to happen if I say this shit out loud to the people that I have close relationships with, right? Like, I think that for me is the aha moment, both in, I think when you go through training, especially in medicine and in psychiatry and psychoanalysis, they kind of train you to be a little bit white. So the way that like, a lot of comments that I got was, we don't like the way that you walk in the room. We don't like how you said that. We don't like your tone. I kept kind of observing it. And I would say stuff. And the more that I would say stuff, the more that they would attack you and be like, you're the problem. And I think the aha moment for me was not the observation, but kind of like, I've had it. Like, I am done with this stuff. Like, this whole system, everything in it is all jacked. And I'm just going to, start saying all this stuff in my personal relationships, and I'm not going to cater it, and I'm not going to make it apologetic, and let's see what happens. And I think I didn't want to do that for a long period of time, because I think I felt, sorry, it's very loud in New York City. I think I felt that I would have to go, I think I didn't want to see it in people. You know what I mean? And I'm not talking about people who are like overtly racist. I'm talking about just your everyday folk, people that you have some relationships with. And that I knew that I would have to go through a lot of loss of relationships, that I would have to stop talking to people. And I think that was sort of the aha moment for me of like, enough is enough. Like, I'm done here.
Okay, you said something that was interesting. How did they train you to be white? How did they do that?
It's very subtle, but basically I would say that it's a continual attack on your perceptions. That whenever you bring something up that threatens their sense of self, they're going to be like, well, did that really happen? You've misunderstood me. You must be confused. It's always putting an idea in someone's mind that they must be the confused one, that they're perceptually off. We're just getting to know each other, right? And without a sense that their own defensiveness, that you've triggered something in their own defensiveness that they don't actually want to look at. I can give you an example of this. I think when I was in residency, I had a very famous supervisor. And one moment in time, he had made an error about the time. And I had showed up at the right time and he wasn't there. And I had another supervision and I was talking about this. And I said, you know, that I was going to say that I had come at this time. And basically that I'd said that I'd come to time. Well, do you really want to do that? I think the more polite thing to do is to be like, I think that there was some confusion here, right? Now, this is what happened in a supervision where a senior psychiatrist is teaching me that as a brown woman, what I need to do is be like, oh my God, I'm so confused. I'm confused, like, you know, rather than actually sort of say like, because to protect the ego of a very famous senior psychiatrist. I think there must have been confusion to not actually assert that I was not the one, to basically, and for me to say like that actually, I think what he had said was, he had directed me to sort of say, I must be confused. And I was like, well, I'm not confused, right? But when you talk like that and you say, I'm not confused, it's sort of seen as an affront. But I think that would be part of the teaching of what it is to be white, is to sort of cater to it, you know, that what I was doing was not polite. And I didn't really understand that until you actually see that all these institutions operate that way, that a lot of what whiteness is are certain ways of speaking, acting, writing around niceness, politeness, which I think is actually to protect the egos of people who are white from the truth. That it is considered very rude of me as a brown woman, incredibly disrespectful, to not say that I'm not the confused one, even though I didn't make the error. I think that's the baseline expectation of what is the relationship of a woman of color to a senior white. Well, he's really esteemed. He's really famous.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is they was teaching you to know your place and to be subjugated.
It's more than that. It's almost like a how dare you actually just say what actually happened.
Yeah, right? They're telling you to know your place.
Yeah.
So let me ask you another question.
Sure.
Because the white supremacists, you do know about their tactics of divide and conquer, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you've been in these rooms, a lot of these rooms haven't had Black Americans in them, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think when I was in training, I feel like I only knew of one senior Black psychiatrist.
Okay. So how did they treat you versus a Black American? I got a few questions to that. How did they treat you versus you notice how they treated Black Americans?
I think it depends, and and this is just from my limited point of view, if the person who is Black was in a position of power or not. Now, on one level, I think what I saw was that if someone is senior and in a position of power, what I noticed, and it was sort of laughable, was that every time that person walked into the room, the crowd would go silent, or they would get very deferential towards her. Or they would suddenly start behaving. And I felt like I would suddenly start laughing at this, because on one level you could say it looks like they respected this person, but I think that they just cleaned up their act because they're racist. You know, it's It's actually because they're scared of the Black person.
Okay, you said scared.
They're more because a lot of their own aggression they see, I think they imagine that it's going to come from that person, but they're not able to say that it's their own aggression or it's their own fear or it's their own whatever. Especially I think with someone who's senior, but I think they clean up their act, I feel like, is what I feel like I've seen a lot. The second that someone senior comes in, that is Black.
Okay. So have you ever noticed them, let's say in your life experience, or maybe even friends of yours that you may have, maybe within, let's say your community, have you ever had them say, Aruna, Dr. Aruna, y'all kind of better than those Black people. Y'all don't do this, y'all don't do that. Have they ever done you that before?
Not in such a direct way. I think the way that it arises in psychiatry is talking about people of color, and especially, I would say, people who are Black as if they're concrete. Now, in psychiatry, that's considered an insult because it means that they don't have access to metaphor and fantasy. But actually, what's happening is that they're addressing real realities, like actually being scared. But for white people, that's not the same reality. So they're, you can't do this kind of work. You're too concrete. This person is too concrete. And I've noticed, especially in psychiatry and psychoanalysis, this sort of sense from especially white senior psychiatrists and white psychoanalysts that people of color are concrete without a sense that actually their reality isn't shared. That for a Black man walking down the street, if someone walks across the street, it's because they're racist and they're scared of him. Now, if he brings that up and starts talking about it, they're like, well, you must be really paranoid. He's not paranoid. It's actually happening to him. It's just not something that they can relate to. And since they can't actually relate to that experience of doing nothing and walking down the street and eliciting fear, then they think that someone is getting fixated on reality and unable to focus on fantasy is sort of how I feel like I've seen it in the field.
Okay, so divide and conquer is something that they have used, and we all know that white supremacy has globally affected everybody, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so in the area of colorism, that's definitely affected my community, and would it be safe to say it's affected your community as well?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so we don't really hear about the colorism that goes on in other communities. We just focus in more so we know our life experience. But how did it affect the Indian community? Because I read about the caste system, but could you explain some of that? Because this is the reason why I'm asking this question.
Sure.
Because we have incidents, we've seen them where people that's almost dark as me that come from India, but yet they say some words like a white supremacist to a Black person. So I'm trying to understand where that comes from. Like, dude, we almost the same color. Like, what are you talking about? So can you explain that, where that comes from?
Sure. I think that it comes from a history of, and I think this is maybe, we're living right now in America and we see the largest level of violence right now, I'd say, towards Indigenous people and Black America and Latin Americans. And India, they opened the gates largely, to people who had backgrounds and were engineers. But India is a country that has its own history of colonialism and conversion. And I think that whenever you begin that attack, whether it's through converting through religious conversion or going in and taking resources again and again and again and again, it's that same perceptual thing. We're here to help you as you commit violence. We're here to do this. So part of the way that colonialism and conversion works, and part of the way that I'd say professionalism in academia works, is a continual level of attack to make you feel inferior. So I'd say a lot of ways that I would conceptualize it in India, in South America, and many other communities of color is that we have our own trauma and we have not dealt with that shit yet. like that people have gone in, taken our stuff, taken our culture. I mean, everything that we do is commodified. Yoga is commodified. They can't even call it Hindu. It's considered too threatening. They can't call anything what it actually is anymore because they've stolen it, right? It's become something for like white America. It's something that white women teach now. But that's actually pretty arrogant. So everything that we have has actually been taken, colonized, converted, and narratives of India have been changed. And I think the same pattern is not just actually in India, but it is in many places. It is in South America. You know, we've seen what's happened with all the schools of Native Americans. It's happened in East Asia. There is a whole world of white supremacy that has killed, slaughtered people, stolen their culture, not acknowledged it, treated the people poorly. And this has occurred worldwide. And over time, people begin to feel very inferior. And I think unless you actually deal with your own trauma, I don't think anyone can actually move anywhere, you know?
But I'm glad you brought that up. So you talk about how, you know, what normally the white supremacists would do, steal somebody's culture, normally, right? What they create and claim it their own. Yeah. And that anger should be expressed, and that anger should be, you know, screamed to the rooftop. But the question I have is, and you're a psychologist, so you can maybe understand this, is that, you know, we as, you know, Black Americans or even African people throughout the world, it seems like, you know, why you had a smoke for us, but don't have a smoke for the one who steals your culture, who colonized your land, who constantly interfere in your business. You know, it seems like you want to get in bed with them, but then have smoke for us. And I'm like, where that come from? I don't understand that. So that's why I'm just asking you.
Yeah. And when you say smoke, what do you mean?
You could be rude, hostile, could even be racist. I had a flight attendant that came interview on here, and she was, you know, serving in first class, and she had a man, an East Indian man, literally got upset with her because he thought she was too slow, and ended up calling her the N-word. I'm like, dude, somebody will call you the same thing if they didn't look twice. So I'm just trying to understand it, you know, because I'm about healing, right?
Yeah. So I think the N-word, like I said, I think that my stance is that anyone who actually hates Black people, right? And keep in mind that I think what is Black has changed over in time. And, you know, in India, we were the Black people, like the word Kala was used, right? And that means Black. So what is Black in different cultures and different moments in time over history has changed. But I think that it's that level of internalized like self-hatred that you have not actually recovered from. And part of this like sort of divide and conquer, I think when people get to America is you haven't healed from your own trauma, right? And then they try to co-opt you into supremacy. You know what? You're really shitty. Like we think you're shitty. But maybe one day you can attain to whiteness, but you always need a bottom. And in America, I think they're, you know, sort of what they say is Black America will be the bottom. And I think they do this very subtly to kind of co-opt you into this sort of psychology.
So you said that the American system tells immigrants when they come to this country in their own sort of way that, you know, you're better than those Black Americans, so, you know, just don't be like them.
I think they pull you into a narrative, right? And I think I spoke about this at Yale, that I noticed that when if you look at academic departments, right, there's history, and then there's like African American studies, East Indian studies, like South Asian studies, you know, Latin American studies, Cambodian studies. All of these are different departments. Now, why do they do that? Why do they keep like these classes of, you know, cultural studies all located differently and far away from each other? And I've sat in on many of these classes, you know, Latin American studies, East Asian studies, and they all sort of say the same thing. White people have taken all of our stuff. They've killed all of our people. White people have destroyed everything we have. You can go to the same course and take it in Latin American studies. White people have stolen our stuff. They've taken everything we have. They've destroyed all of our culture. Now, I think the reason unconsciously why they keep everyone apart is they don't want everyone to know. they don't want everyone to know the same culprit. It's sort of, I think what I had likened it to, it's sort of like a man who cheats keeps all the women that he cheats on like far away and in different rooms. Because if they ever actually got together, they would light that man on fire. Like they would throw a party and like that party would be lit, because they would actually be able to get together, compare stories, and see what has actually been happened. But I think the way it functions psychologically, unconsciously, is to keep everyone apart and to fragment communities of color, and also to isolate Black America and make them feel like they're alone in this struggle. And I think then also to co-opt everyone else into participating in supremacy, which I think by default is also participating in anti-Blackness, because on some level you're participating in this dual scheme of dividing the world in two.
Yeah, and Dr. Khilanani, let me say this. That term for me, even hearing the term people of color, is very offensive to me. I've always felt offensive, but let me tell you why I'm offended by that, and I don't use it on this show. It's because I believe every group is a respected group, a protected group of people, and their names need to be called, right? And for the white supremacists to say, "Oh yeah, y'all just people of color, but we white, but we just all y'all people of color," that's so disrespectful. That's why I just don't like that. That's why I like to constantly call out people's different names, different groups. Because that's a way of like labeling everybody or even making everybody less than, right? So even when I brought up earlier about that subtle way they try to tell people Black Americans are the issue, or you could step on them, it even happens with, unfortunately, even some of my brothers and sisters that come from the African continent and even from the Caribbean. They bring in people more with a tribalistic mentality, and then they come in like that. And I've been told by different immigrants, that's why I wanted to ask you that question, they kind of told, well, watch those Black Americans, and like, we ain't done nobody nothing. If it wouldn't been for us, nobody else could have came here.
Yeah, of course.
Because at one point in time, they didn't want nobody here but white folk.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, like, why are we the target? That's why I always, and this is why a lot of times Black Americans now are saying this, and that's not a good look for other people. It's like, hey, you know what? Since everybody kind of turned their back on us and kind of treating us like we, just to be stepped on, we good. We gonna just, y'all handle them. And usually it don't end up too well when we do that.
When you do what exactly?
When we're stepping back and just looking out for our own group per se, and then you let other people come to this country, don't realize the country they came into. We've been trying to tell everybody that's come in here, listen, you entering white supremacy. You're not entering this utopia that they told you overseas that America is just this, oh my God, it's this land of milk and honey. Oh no.
But I think
grimy and dirty here.
I think that your observation is accurate, though. I think that is actually the goal of supremacy, is to get everybody to internalize that idea. That white people are at the top of the food chain and black people are at the bottom of the food chain, and you are less than. To buy into that.
Well, I hope that's not I'm gonna say this much. That's a bad decision if you make that coming into America. I'm gonna let you know, we know these people like the back of our hand. Now let me ask you another question here. Sure. Do you believe, based off of what you know, the psychology of the white supremacists, do you believe they ever want to even get along with I'm gonna say Black Americans, because that's most of the fight, Black America, and what the white supremacists are doing? Do they actually want to get along, or do you believe Black Americans should just kind of go their own way, separate, or whatever else that we choose to do?
When you say white supremacists, who are you talking about specifically?
Anyone that believes in white supremacy, that believes in the domination and control of all things, government, military, anything of power, dominated by white people, controlled by white people, and everyone's subjugated to white people. That's what I mean by white supremacists. White supremacists is just not a Ku Klux Klan. White supremacists. Okay. January the 6th showed you white supremacists.
I think that I would say that I think most people on some level have adopted, and I think most white people have not consciously, but unconsciously adopted white supremacy. And if I feel like what would be helpful for Black America, and I've said the same thing to Indian Americans, is to like literally, I think you're going to get sick the longer you are around whiteness. It's going to affect your body. It's going to affect your mind. It's going to affect your soul. Like, I think it's better to go out and start your own stuff, start your own businesses, make it the way that you want to be. Like, show everything through leadership so that you actually have your own things and don't feel like you actually have to be dependent on a particular system or an institution. And I think that I feel like I get a lot of pushback with this, but I think that this sickness is actually everywhere. It's in law, it's in medicine, it's in corporate America. And people always think that they can handle it without seeing the enormous psychological toll it actually takes on a human being. You know, always getting called in. I mean, I can think of a lot of Black men I know that are specifically always targeted by HR. They're always getting called in. They haven't done anything, but it's always like, you did something, you must have done this. And they're always trying to get you on something petty. And they will always try to make it seem like it is something else. Now, that is it's not a small way to live. That is like a traumatic way of living, because you're going to always be on edge. It's going to elicit a level of hyper perfectionism in you. You're going to have to feel like you have to do everything perfect, because if you do a tiny thing wrong, sign in late, didn't cross like one T, they're going to come for you, And I think that way of living is actually incredibly hard, painful, that you have to represent all of Black America. I mean, that is too much. So I actually don't think it's psychologically healthy. I think that, you should let in the people who've earned your trust, who have earned your trust. And like, that's it. Like, other people who haven't earned your trust, like, it's not your job. I feel like, as Black America, and people are getting killed every single day. Black men are getting killed. People feel on edge. It's not your job. Like, why should you be trusting everybody? I think that's like almost a wrong decision. I feel like it is the other way around, that it is everyone else's job, and it's especially white America's job, to earn that trust back. It is their job to earn that trust back. It is not your job, and it's not Black America's job to keep having conversations about race, to try to teach people, to exhaust your energy, to exhaust your supply, to exhaust everything you have to give to try to get someone else to change. Like, you don't get anything out of that relationship. Nothing. Like, zero. Go start your own stuff. Like, go make a Black-owned hospital. Go, you know what I mean? Go do it. People are like, I can't. Go do it. I feel like the world would support it. We need this. This is exactly what we need. Make it have the values that you want. Make it have the kind of community that you want. And then, like, find the people that you find the most annoying that are white, and like, invite them in. I think this would be the best kind of like leadership, and show them how it's done. Because I promise you, one thing I feel like I've seen with white America is they don't know this other way of living. They don't know what it is to have a community. They don't know another way of doing things. And I think that would be kind of like a win-win situation, where people can actually build something and have something of your own and create, and not feel like you're being drained, exploited, emotionally used, abused, or that you have to put yourself in a position where it's your job to trust someone that I don't actually think that you should be trusting. Like I think the world has shown us, like, if I was a Black man, I don't think I would be like being like, oh, I should trust that person. That doesn't seem like the right thing to do, because that could actually get you killed. Like, it is in fact a question of life and death. It's not a small matter that you should just be like throwing your trust around everywhere,
Right. Well, you said a lot of things that we normally say here, and you definitely basically just quoted the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and say you just need to separate and build your own. He said that in the 60s. I'm a firm believer of that. But the only thing I disagree with, one thing you said about inviting them in, let me tell you why you can't invite them in. Psychologically, a lot of Black people still have Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah.
So when the moment you inject, white people into certain things, that slaves gene pops up, and then they start, get into slave mode, some people. So I believe that we need a time, like you say, to heal. We need a time to heal. We need a time to do for self. We just need that time, away, because, you cannot be around anyone abusive if you want healing, right?
Yeah. I didn't mean a majority. I meant, and let me know what you think about this. I'm curious. I mean, just a couple. Like if someone is a minority, they might actually be acting a little bit differently if you had your own company.
Well, let me say this.
Yeah.
In the continent of Africa, from what I've seen, they are more on their P's and Q's because they're outnumbered. So I understand that portion of it. But I would say it's I don't think it's a need. We don't need we need oxygen. That's what we need.
Yeah, you need to be
we need family. We don't need nobody else. That's just my opinion. Now, if someone is, like I say, I have the belief of Malcolm X, which says that if they would like to help or assist in something, and they are mean to be good, they can do that, but they cannot lead at all of anything. That's my belief of what Malcolm X said, but inviting them in, say, let's do this, because the problem is the white supremacist mentality is I don't have to listen to Black people. I'm the one need to be in control because I know more, even though you may not even have the education, expertise, etc. So this is why I say that we need that time.
I totally get the psychological need for someone to make their own boundaries and heal. That makes sense to me. I feel completely.
Yes.
That I think that to me, I think goes without saying. I probably should have said that first, but I think that to me was sort of like a baseline expectation that you need your own psychological space to like live, breathe, and heal before you want to actually do something extra. I wonder though, if someone wants to come in, that might be someone and if someone wants to help. If someone both wants to help and someone wants to come in to a largely Black organization, I wonder if they might be interested in changing. I don't know the answers to these. I'm just kind of putting them out.
Once again, I'll repeat it. If a person say, hey, I just want to help, and they check out and they thoroughly check out. I mean, the people thoroughly check them out, right? And they say that I could be of help for you to get this permit. I could be a help of you to get this, whatever it may be. And they do that. Okay, awesome. Thank you. We greatly appreciate it. And if you thoroughly check out, one thing about Black people, even though we've been through all the things we've been through, we're not a hateful people. We are a loving people, and we are forgiving people to a fault, to our own fault. Okay. So that's not the issue. The issue is that Black people have been so dependent on a white system for so long, that we need to know how to do things for self without the assistance of going back to what's familiar to say, okay, white mommy and white daddy, can you do it? You know what I'm saying? We're capable. We're capable. Okay. We built this country off of our backs with slavery. So we're capable, but we just need to make sure to have that time. It doesn't mean you hate nobody. It just means that you just need that time to build up your economy, to build up. And listen, we build up our economy. We build businesses, restaurants, schools, whatever. Hey, anybody is welcome to come in and shop and be a part of something great, like anybody else. We're not hateful people, but we just saying that we just need to build up, like I say, our economy, our schools, for instance. Glad we bring up schools. What do you think about the Texas Senate that's recently came out and stated that teachers in Texas don't need to be teaching that the Ku Klux Klan is morally wrong? What is the psychological, thought process behind that?
I think that it's all part of the same thing, that it is eliciting a defensive reaction and that white people's identity is at stake. Their identity as good, helping, because if you say that the Ku Klux Klan is wrong, if you say we've done all these things to Black America, if you talk about slavery in history books, you're going to have to start to feel a lot of negative feelings, and you're going to have to really kind of go inward and look at yourself. And that is uncomfortable, and they don't want to do it. And since they don't want to actually face that, they want to go on being like, we're amazing, everything is amazing, this is amazing, that's amazing. Then that's what you have. Like, we're not going to say that this is morally wrong. Because if it is morally wrong, then I'm not as awesome as I think I am. And I think that is ultimate. I'm not a superhero. I don't provide for Black people. I mean, I think that's the thought that people have a lot, is like, I have given you this, I have given you that. I have provided, not that I've taken, not that I've exploited, not that I've abused. It's actually, all of it is the opposite.
So do you believe that, and this is something that I say constantly, and I'm going to ask you this question. I believe white supremacy is a culture. And if you take that culture away from them, they cease to exist. Do you believe that?
That who ceased to exist?
Okay, those we know as white people. If you take away white supremacy, take it completely away.
Yeah.
That's because that's something that they created. Racism is something that they created.
Yeah.
We didn't create that. Indians didn't create it.
Right.
You know, Asians didn't create it. Do you believe we take away white supremacy and racism? Do you believe that they're fighting so hard because that's literally like their culture?
Yeah, it's who they are. It's all they are. Like there's going to be nothingness after that. If you lose this idea of like, oh my God, I've helped Africa. Oh my God, I've helped these people. I've helped that. If you lose that crazy lie, which is a massive delusional system, who are you anymore? You're nothing. Like you're crumbling. Like in psychiatry, where we call this like a narcissistic decompensation. And that's actually kind of what we're seeing in the country right now. Mm-hmm. Like they're fighting to hold on to their sense of self because their sense of self is not real. It's based completely on lies. They will cease to exist.
And making sure, and part of that is indoctrinating children and I say all children, not just white children, but all children into racism, white supremacy. Well, you know, Dr. Khilanani, let me tell you something. You know, now that I've talked with you and interviewed with you, you know, if you look at the media and the way they talked about you, they described you like a monster. But talking to you, you seem just like a regular person that just has some experience with dealing with racism and white supremacy. It seemed like to me.
Good to hear.
Yeah, because, you know, I don't, this is why on our platform, we let people talk. I don't like to try to interrupt you too much unless I just something we want to get in because of thought process. But I don't see any monster. I don't see any of that. I think that's a mischaracterization that the media was putting out there.
Were you looking, I guess maybe the question around white supremacy is, were you looking for a monster? Did you believe the headlines? Because I think part of the way that the headlines and supremacy works is that their expectation is that people are going to believe what they see and what they read. You know?
Yeah, I read all publications, whether they right wing, left wing, in the middle, international. And I knew the white supremacists was going to have a problem with you immediately. I knew it. I said, uh-oh. And people, and I'm a firm believer what Malcolm X said, that if the white supremacist loves somebody, run away from them, and they hate them, run to them. So I'm more so, that's why I say I got to go run and talk to this one. I say, because they don't like it.
I appreciate you.
Yeah. So Dr. Khilanani, tell people, you know, like if they have any questions or, you know, anything they may ask you that after the fact that maybe I did not ask, how can they get in contact with you?
Sure. They can follow me on Instagram, or they can shoot me a message on my website. I think Instagram is probably faster at this point. And I can get back, or I can start to do videos and put out content. I'm going to be putting out my series soon. It was been halted, I think, a bit because of this whole mess and the level of death threats that I've been getting and still continue to get. But my series is, the first one is about the conscious identity of white people. Then the second series is about actually the suffering of people who are white and also people of color who've internalized whiteness. What is that suffering? You know, I think we often talk about white people that like they're not suffering from racism, but they are actually emotionally suffering because there's many things that they have not received when they continue to take in the way that they do and don't acknowledge it. So there's a flip side of harm to white America, I think, because of that I think really needs to be acknowledged so that they can also heal, and also people of color can heal for what they've internalized. And then my third series is actually kind of going where, you know, I'm surprised I got this much shit for just the first series, but the third series is the hardest one, kind of going where no one wants to go, which is the white unconscious, and seeing what is actual real motivations, real feelings, real thoughts about, you know, people who are not white, Black men, Black women. And also then the last series is about how is this located and situated in culture? You know, what is the world that we live in that kind of also supports this system psychologically?
So okay, in that Instagram, how do people get to that Instagram? You mentioned it, but you didn't tell us how to get there.
Oh, it's just my first and last name, Aruna underscore Khilanani.
Okay. All right. And the same thing about the website?
It's just arunakhilanani.com.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. All right, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, we'll put that information in the pinned comment if you want to contact Dr. Khilanani and ask us some questions. But Doctor, thank you for joining us on the show today, and it's been good talking to you.
Good talking to you as well.